Now, even though I'm new to Texas for the most part, I missed the freeze of 2021 by about 8 months, maybe a year later. I moved to Texas. So I was actually scheduled to drive back yesterday, and I kept getting a bunch of phone calls and emails from people when I posted online that I was leaving, and they were just saying, don't go, don't get on the road. And I was wondering why. And I looked at the report and it said, okay, it's going to be cold maybe Sunday and Monday. But now apparently this is a different type of storm and they're expecting ice through half of the country, 2,000-mile long storm. And it's just not going to be safe. Also, I live in Houston. Our systems there are very fragile, it seems, and they're predicting that the power is going to go out and it could be out for weeks because if the ice is sitting on the power lines, they'll break. I remember we had a hurricane and a tornado. I lost power for 2 weeks both times and had to leave. So I don't want to get all the way to Texas just to not have any electricity at my home. Therefore, I'm still in Arizona for the time being, and I'm just going to wait to get on the road. But this is what is happening to the whole rest of the country. Let's go over this report together.
Forecasters tracking a monster winter storm that could become historic and catastrophic with dangerous impacts expected for tens of millions of Americans this weekend. Buckets of snow, crippling ice, and frigid temps threaten to paralyze the South, Midwest, and East Coast. Joining us now is the director of the National Weather Service, Ken Graham. Director Graham, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Jan. Thanks for having me on today. So thank you.
When you hear words like historic and catastrophic, that's going to get some people's attention. What makes this storm different from what we typically see?
I think part of it is just the size. I mean, I was looking at it even this morning. We have our website's weather.gov, and I looked at it this morning just trying to take in the big picture. And we have watches and warnings stretching from New Mexico to New England, 2,000 miles. So more than half the country is involved with this winter weather event. So I think one part of it, we get ice, we get snow. Nothing's off the chart historic in some of the amounts, but what's off the chart to me is just the sheer size of this storm.
It is humongous. Talk about some of the timelines here, when and where the storm's going to start to hit the hardest.
Yeah, it looks like things are going to be starting up today. So looking at Texas, you start looking at Oklahoma. So today you'll start seeing the increase in some of that precipitation. The cold's already filtering into the country from the north.
See, I thought I was going to be okay because when Texas is a monster state, I'm on the eastern part going towards Louisiana and Houston, close to Galveston by the water. I was thinking this was going to be just the panhandle, Hurricane Alley, Oklahoma, northern Texas, Dallas, Amarillo, whatever. Now they're saying it can stretch all the way down to Houston. The Houston mayor is saying don't leave the house from today through next week, Tuesday. And I'm still sitting here in 70-degree weather in Arizona and Phoenix and Scottsdale. And yeah, it's going to be kind of hard to get me out of here. I do want to get back to Texas, but not if it's going to be risky and frigid. I'm just going to go ahead and wait it out.
Cold temperatures are going to be in place. So you're going to start, the precipitation begins today, progressing over the weekend. So into Saturday, Oklahoma, Saturday night, you start thinking Arkansas, you think in Louisiana, and then Saturday night and into Sunday, even Sunday night in New England, you start looking at the I-95 corridor, it's going to start seeing some significant snowfall and even sleet. So at that time, that's the progression. So it's a weekend event, and it's going to be significant air travel.
It's crazy. They're talking about New England. I've only done 2 winters really my entire life. I did a winter in Michigan when I used to work in Oakland County outside of Detroit, and I did a winter in Chicago. In my opinion, for those people that live in these places, rent should be free during the winter because I just could not imagine the fact that people literally pay money to live in these conditions with snow. And it's amazing. The shit, it like literally falls out of the sky and it's everywhere. And it's cold. Like being from California, I'm not used to cold weather. I don't understand it. So the fact that people volunteer to live in these places is just it's kind of psychotic to me because they have to deal with this. And now look, we're getting just a little sample in Houston and like literally we're all falling apart. This is the equivalent of like a winter snowstorm hitting LA. I'll tell you this, if it gets under 60 degrees in California, we don't go to school, we don't leave the house. So basically, even if it rains, rain is snow for us. So if it rains, we don't leave. So imagine me talking about ice and sleet and hailstorms. Yeah, right. I'm staying in. I'm not going.
Road travel, just significant impacts across the board.
Also significant cold, a major factor here. How dangerous could these frigid temperatures be? And what should people know about the risk of power outages and heating failures?
Yeah, we're starting to use language like, especially the areas East Texas, Arkansas, in the South, where you're going to get the freezing rain. So that we predict a half inch to an inch of freezing rain in some of those areas. That's catastrophic. That's trees coming down. That's power outages. And you mentioned the cold, Jan. That's part of the problem here too. Is the cold isn't going away anytime soon. So once all that ice falls, and then you start having zero wind chills. You have temperatures well below freezing all over the Gulf Coast. The ice isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So
I have most of my audience is on the West Coast, but I do have some people in Europe. I have some people that are from these colder places. I don't know how they deal with it. I have no idea. When you can see this is coming on the news, does everybody just bunker down and just stay in the house? I mean, I'm just so used to being outdoors and driving around, and I'm not used to just sliding into snow piles. This has to be definitely a little inconvenient and confusing.
power outages could be prolonged in some places, especially rural areas where you can't get trucks in there with the trees down. I wouldn't be surprised.
Look at that. Right now, where we have ICE conducting their operations and we're fighting with leftists and domestic terrorists, minus 40 degrees. I wonder how many of these domestic terrorists are going to be out there honking their horns and blowing their whistles while we're conducting law enforcement arrests when it's negative 40 degrees. See, when it's convenient to protest, that's when people protest. This is right now the dead of winter, is what you would call this. I want to see if they're going to be out there in minus 40 degrees. I didn't even know it got that cold anywhere in the United States. That is insane. Kansas City, minus 11 degree wind chill. Indianapolis, now I can understand. I saw an advertisement 2 days ago that said, and Indiana will pay people to move there because they have a net negative migration. So they're trying to attract people to move there. But how? I used to live in Chicago, minus 28 degrees. And that's mainly because the wind from the lakes. I remember when I first went to Chicago for the first time, and I sat in the airport for an extra 2 hours after I got off the plane because I tried to walk outside. I've never felt cold like that, where like the bone in my face froze. And I went back inside and I would refuse to leave the terminal. It took me 2 hours to build up enough courage to go get in a taxi and then go to my place. But this is crazy weather. This is insane. Okay, Houston 61. Okay, that's not too bad. Maybe I can, but like again, driving through Central Texas, it's the wrong place to want to just spin out of control. I got my dogs with me. I got to be a little bit more cautious.
Some people won't have power for possibly a week, so we got to be prepared for that.
And that's really scary when you talk about sub-zero, sub-freezing.
They're already predicting power outages to last at least a week. And because we're so prone to power outages in Houston, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to just wait.
Temperatures from some of these areas that aren't used to this. We've seen, the forecast change a few times as the storm does come into focus. Not too dramatically, though. Why are winter storms like this particularly hard to track, even with updated technology?
Well, I was director of the Hurricane Center, and I found it was easier to predict a hurricane than it is winter weather. It really is.
Wow.
Because there's so many factors that come into a winter weather event. You got to have the cold. You have to have some sort of lifting mechanism to lift the air up to cause the precipitation. And you have to have moisture. So in this case, three things coming together. One of them is the cold air. We got it. Check mark. We got the cold air in place. The other one's a low pressure off the Pacific, and now it's in the desert Southwest. That's going to be moving across the southern United States, providing that lift. And the other one is in the Gulf of America, about 10 to 12,000 feet, there's a warm area. bringing up some moisture into the system. That's what's going to cause some of the moisture involved with the freezing rain. So we have thrown everything at this, Jan. We have aircraft. We've actually sent aircraft to the Pacific to look at the low pressure out there. We have aircraft at several different altitudes in the Gulf of America to start looking at where's the moisture, how much moisture there is. So a very difficult forecast, getting the observations we need to get into the models to make the prediction.
This is such a massive storm. Let me ask my co-host Arthur if this is something. Arthur, you see what the weather forecast is. We're doing a story about it. When was the last time there was a 2,000-mile long winter storm or some kind of storm that covered the entire country like this? How long ago was that?
No problem, Rico. While there have been large winter storms in US history, a storm covering 2,000 miles and impacting virtually the entire country is quite rare. The most recent comparable megastorm was likely in late January 1978, known as the Cleveland Superbomb or the Blizzard of 78. It stretched across much of the Midwest to the northeast. However, even that storm didn't span quite as far as what you're describing. The scale you're noting is extremely unusual, which is why it's getting so much attention now.
Why don't you do me a favor? Look up the Weather Channel, and then you can see what they're saying about this storm, and then see if you can find any other comparables.
It seems I hit a snag searching directly online just now. But don't worry, if you'd like, you can share a direct link to the Weather Channel's article, or I can try again with refined terms. Let me know if you'd prefer that, or if you have other sources you'd like me to check.
Just look up throughout all the news. Just look on the internet about this storm and tell me if there's any other storms that you can find that are similar in size. And when was the last time we've seen something like this?
It looks like my internet searches ran into a hiccup. Let me try one more time to directly find those comparable historical storms and get you some solid context. One moment. It seems my direct search attempts are running into issues right now, but based on known historical events, storms of this size are exceedingly rare. The storm of the century in March 1993 was one of the few systems that impacted a massive swath from the Gulf Coast to the northeast. Also, the blizzards of 1978 were large and impactful. If you need the absolute latest from news sources, I recommend checking the Weather Channel site directly, as I'm currently having trouble pulling that live for you.
Thank you very much, Arthur. So apparently this is so rare that even our AI cannot find more information about it. You know, I of course, I'm naturally going to ask about cloud seeding side effects, weather technology. There is HARP there, and there's several different HARPs, but we've seen a lot of cloud seeding in the Gulf, in California, in the Pacific Northwest, and in different parts of the country. This could be a side effect of the cloud seeding. So that's why we're going to see some of these rare and exotic storms that are going to seemingly come out of nowhere. Luckily, since Trump became president, this was the first year in about 100 years that we didn't have a hurricane season. We have always had hurricanes every year, but magically this past year, since Trump became president, no hurricane. So I guess that's a net positive if you think about it. So let's see here. Let's get a little bit more information.
For being here. Good evening. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. As we come back on the air, millions are gearing up for a massive winter storm set to slam more than half of the U.S. Ryan Smith tracking it all from the live desk, starting with Ryan, who is expected to get hit first with these brutal conditions?
Yeah, this will be rough for the days to come, Dee Dee. This will blanket a majority of the country here. We're talking about 235 million people from Arizona all the way through up to New England, the state of Maine, in the path right now for a potentially catastrophic winter storm expected to deliver crippling snow and ice over the weekend. Now, 11 states have already declared a state of emergency tonight. State and local leaders now urging people to go out and prepare and, of course, stock up on those essentials. That includes storing 3 days worth of food, water, medications, of course, if needed, when they're available, if you are forced to stay home and ride out that storm.
If you live in the very rural parts of the state and your electricity goes out and it's because of downed trees and power lines, it could be a while before you get power restored. So I urge everyone listening and watching to begin to plan ahead.
A paralyzing ice storm also expected here to be a main threat of this colossal winter system. Places like Little Rock, Arkansas, and Raleigh, North Carolina could see up to a ½ inch of ice. Now this right here, this is the power outage forecast we are tracking for you tonight. It spans from Dallas, Texas, all the way up to Richmond, Virginia on the mid-Atlantic.
The good thing is I'm in the yellow. Austin and Houston, I'm in the yellow. But you never know. This is a storm. They're unpredictable. Anything can happen. So I'm not going to get on the road to go until next week back to Texas. So you don't have to worry about me, folks. I will be here in Arizona writing this out. So I will keep you guys up to date if there's any other changes when it comes to this storm. But we got like 10 other topics to talk about today on live. So I'll be back on in about 20 minutes. And remember, America first, America only, and stay warm, stay safe.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.